Hi, and welcome to this Unreal Engine 5 tutorial. Today I'll show you how to create a cinematic day-to-night transition using sequencer, lighting, and VFX. During the cinematic, we'll create a simple camera movement, transition the environment from daytime to nighttime, adjust the ambient lighting, and finally trigger a VFX effect. So let's start by looking at the scene setup. For this example, I'm using this environment, but of course you can follow the same process with your own scene. During the cinematic, the camera will slowly move forward while the lighting transitions from day to night. At the same time, we'll also trigger a VFX effect. Before we start animating the lights, go to the exposure settings in your post-process volume and set the metering mode to manual. This disables auto exposure, so Unreal Engine won't automatically brighten the scene as the sun goes down. This helps us achieve a darker and more consistent nighttime look. Also, make sure Infinite Extent Unbound is enabled, so the post-process volume affects the entire level. If you don't already have a post-process volume in your scene, click the Add Quickly button at the top and go to Volumes and drag a post-process volume into the viewport. Then enable Infinite Extent Unbound and set the exposure metering mode to manual. Now we're ready to start animating our lighting. First, let's create our level sequence. Press Ctrl and Space to open the content browser. To keep things organized, I'm going to create a sequencer folder inside the folder containing my scene. Right-click, go to Cinematics and create a new level sequence. I'm going to name it ls_day-to-night_Trudeau. Now, let's open it. Next, let's add a Cine camera actor to the scene. I'll rotate it roughly toward the direction I want. And again, to keep things organized, I'm going to create a camera folder in the outliner and move the Cine camera actor inside it. Now, from the perspective menu, select the Cine camera actor so we can look directly through the camera. Before positioning it, I'm going to select the camera and adjust the film back settings in the details panel. I'm going to use this preset here, 16:9 DSLR. Now I'll position the camera where I want the cinematic to begin. I'm also going to slightly move some foreground objects to improve the composition. Once you're happy with the starting position, drag the Cine camera actor from the outliner into the sequencer. This automatically creates a camera cuts track for the camera. I'm going to set the sequence length to around 300 frames. Now expand the camera transform track. Move the playhead to the beginning of the sequence and add a transform keyframe. This records the current location, rotation, and scale of the camera. Next, move the playhead toward the end of the sequence. While selecting the camera actor, you can navigate using W, A, S, and D while holding the right mouse button. Move the camera forward until you find the final position you want. Once you're happy with the framing, add another transform keyframe. Now, if we play the sequence, the camera smoothly travels between these two positions. I also want the camera to remain still for a short moment before it starts moving. So I'm going to move the first movement keyframe slightly forward and create another set of keyframes at the beginning. Now the camera stays still for a few seconds and then starts moving forward. And that's our first step complete. Next, we're going to create the day to night transition. My scene already contains a directional light, sky atmosphere, exponential height fog, skylight, and the other environment lighting actors. If you're starting from an empty scene, you can also use the environment light mixer to create these components. For this tutorial, everything is already set up, so we'll simply animate the existing directional light. Select the directional light in the outliner and drag it into the sequencer track list. We'll use its rotation to animate the position of the sun and transition the scene from daytime to nighttime. Make sure the directional light is selected in the outliner. First, use the Jump to Start button to move the playhead to the beginning of the timeline. Then, in the Details panel, add a keyframe to save the current daytime rotation. Move the playhead to around frame 30 and add another keyframe. This will keep the daytime lighting unchanged for the first part of the cinematic. Next, move the playhead to around frame 180. Now hold Ctrl+L and move the mouse to rotate the directional light until you get a nighttime result that works for your scene. In my case, the Y rotation ends up around -1.5 to -1.6. But of course, this value may be different depending on your scene. Once you're happy with the nighttime position, add another keyframe, then move the playhead to the end of the timeline and add one more keyframe to keep the nighttime lighting unchanged until the end of the sequence. Now, if we switch back to our camera view and press play, we can see both the camera movement and the directional light gradually transitioning the scene from day to night. The next step is to adjust the skylight. When the sun goes down, the environment can become too dark, so we'll slightly increase the skylight intensity during the transition. Select the skylight and drag it into the sequencer close to the directional light track. Now, select the skylight in the outliner. Move the playhead back to the beginning of the timeline, and in the Details panel, add a keyframe to save the current skylight settings. Next, move the playhead to around frame 160 and add another keyframe. This will keep the skylight unchanged during the first part of the cinematic. Then move the playhead to the end of the timeline. At the end, increase the intensity scale to around a 10 to make the nighttime environment a little brighter. I'm also going to change the light color slightly toward blue to give the night the colder atmosphere. Once you're happy with the result, add another keyframe. Now, because I want the scene to become brighter a little earlier during the nighttime transition, I'm going to move the playhead back to around frame 200. Here I'll set the intensity scale to around 10 as well, and add another keyframe. This way, the skylight gradually becomes brighter as we transition into night, and then keeps the same intensity until the end of the cinematic. The next step is to add some VFX. For this example, I'm using this tornado that I purchased from Fab. You don't need this exact effect. You can use any Niagara effect you already have, create your own, or use a free one. I'm going to place the effect somewhere in the street. To keep the outliner organized, I'll create a VFX folder and move the Niagara actor inside it. Now drag the Niagara actor into the sequencer, expand it, and add the Niagara component. We don't want the effect to be visible from the beginning of the cinematic, so under the Niagara component, add an FX system toggle track. At the beginning of the sequence, set the FX system to deactivate and add a keyframe. I'll keep it deactivated while the scene is still transitioning. Then, around the point where the nighttime environment becomes established, change it to activate and add another keyframe. Now, if we play the sequence, the VFX remains hidden during the daytime and appears as the environment transitions into nighttime. The activation is a little abrupt though. There are different ways to create a smoother VFX appearance directly inside Niagara, but for this tutorial I want to keep things simple, so I'm going to animate the scale of the Niagara actor. Add a transform track around the moment where the effect begins to appear. Reduce the scale close to 0 and create a keyframe. Then move the playhead forward and increase the scale back to 1. Add another keyframe. Now the VFX gradually grows into the scene instead of instantly appearing at full size. It's a very simple technique, and depending on the VFX, you may want to create a more advanced transition directly inside Niagara. But for this tutorial, this works well enough and keeps this setup easy to understand. And that's it. We now have a simple cinematic camera movement that transitions the environment from daytime to nighttime, while also changing the skylight intensity and color and triggering a Niagara VFX. You can use the same technique to animate many other elements in your cinematics, such as lights, materials, buildings, particles, or other environmental effects. I hope you found this tutorial useful. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.